So today we start subsection 2 of section 1 of the great Upanishad, Kathopanishad, and I will start with verse number 1. I will read. Anyat shreya anyat ut ev preya te ubhay nana arthe purusham sinita tayo shreya आदानस्य साधु भवति हीयते अर्थात या ओ प्रेय वृणीते. So the verse translates to, this is today's verses are all spoken by Lord Yam, and this verse 1.2.1, Lord Yam says, in this world there is that which is correct, Shreya, the other that is pleasant, Preya. Both bind the human to different goals. The one who chooses Shreya chooses well. The one who chooses Preya falls away from the true goal of life. So let's take this up word by word. Anyat means another. So Anyat, another. Shreya, the correct, the righteous. Anyat, another. Ut and Ev, indeed, Preya, what is pleasant. Te, these, Ubhe, both. Nana, different, Arthe, objects. Purusham translates to man. We are translating it to humans. Sinith, binds. Tayo, of these two. Shreya, the good. Adanasya, who chooses. Sadhu is good or blessed. Bhavati, becomes. Hiyate, one who gets deviated or falls away. Arthat, from the essence, from the earth, from the main essence, the true goal. Sahu, who and Preya, the pleasant, Vrinite, chooses. So we are translating it to, in this world, there is that which is the correct, the other which is pleasant. Both bind the human to different goals. The one who chooses Shreya chooses well. The one who chooses Priya falls away from the true goal of life. So let's read it together. Anyat Shreya, Anyat ut ev Priya, te ubhe nana arthe purusham sinita. Tayo Shreya adanasya sadhu bhavati hiyate arthat ya u Priya vrinite. So this is the verse from which the true or the real teaching of Kathopanishad starts. And Lord Yamraj starts off with the two paths that present before all humans, all of us, the path that is correct, the Shreya, and the path that is pleasant, the Priya. And all those of you who have attended the Bhagavad Gita with me would have heard these two paths quoted liberally across the various verses of the Bhagavad Gita. So these two paths, the Shreya, which is the correct, the good, and the pleasant, the easy path, the Preya path, these refer to the choices that we have in contacting the objects of the world that come before us. What Lord Yamraj is saying, that the Shreya, when we choose the Shreya path, it takes us to our ultimate goal, the ultimate goal being that of salvation or moksha, liberation. Whereas the Preya path, the pleasant, consisting of worldly temptations, takes away from our true goal. Now, we will just quickly revise that of all the living beings in the entire creation, it is only the humans that have a choice. The rest of the creation functions as if it were pre-programmed. So a mango seed, if it is given the right environment, it will grow into a sapling and to a tree, and then it will give out mangoes. I mean, it'll as a fruits. So that is what will happen. So it is programmed to do that. It will not give us jackfruits. A mango tree will give us mangoes. Animals will look for food when they're hungry, will look for water when they're thirsty, will look for mates in the mating season. They are pre-programmed. A cow will be a herbivore, a lion, a carnivore, and even in dire circumstances, they will function according to their nature, and that's the way nature is. It is only the humans who have enormous flexibility based on which we choose our action. So we are the only species who have the choice. We use our choice to choose between one action or another. Therefore, if we look around us, our lives range from one extreme to another, unlike that of any other creature. We can be saints, philosophers, thieves, murderers, criminals, and even terrorists. So, with this enormous choice, the technique of right action is very important, and we had covered it in detail in the Bhagavad Gita, and all that will now be the structure on which the Kathopanishad will stand. Actually, all that knowledge will come of good use to us. So, Bhagavad Gita told us that act we must. If we are born, it is because of the remaining vasanas, so we are propelled to act. So, all of us act. Now, here, what is coming before us, that there are two broad categories of action or of our choices: the Shreya, the good, the correct path, or the correct action, which is chosen by the wise, that we have already covered, we have read in the Bhagavad Gita, and the Priya, the pleasant one, which is easy, that is chosen by the ignorant person. Now, the Shreya path here, the righteous path, is available only to humans. Consequently, liberation or moksha is available only to humans. Other living creatures cannot attain moksha. They cannot even consider it because they do not have the choice which they can exercise. Humans have the choice to do what is either correct or what is pleasant. These two paths do not overlap. And further, they lead us to different goals or bind us to different goals. They take us to different realms. Now, Lord Yam says that one who chooses the Shreya, the righteous, good, correct path, chooses well because the person continues progress towards the ultimate goal of for mankind, that of liberation. And he also cautions us that those who choose the Priya or the pleasant path turn away from the true goal of life. With that, we move on to the next verse number 1.2.2. I will read. Shreya cha preya cha manusyam etah to sam paritya vivinakti dhirah shreya hi dhir abhipreyasya vrinite preya mandh yog kshemat vrinite. So the verse translates to: both the correct and the pleasant approach a human. The wise one examines them well and then chooses the correct over the pleasant. The feeble minded, out of attachment and greed, chooses the pleasant path. Let's take this up word by word. Shreya, the correct, cha and Preya, the pleasant, cha and Manushyam, human, et approach. Thaw of these two, samparitya, having examined or having evaluated from all angles. Vivinakti discriminates. Dhir is wise. Shreya, he, the correct only. Dhir, the wise. Abhi, compared to or over. Preyasaha, to the pleasant. Vrinite, prefers or chooses. Preya, the pleasant. Mand is mandbuddhi, feeble minded. Yog is union. So we have been reading about that term. In this context, it means attached to. Shemat, through greed. Vrinite, vrinite, prefers. So the verse translates to both the correct Shreya and the pleasant Preya approach a human. The wise one examines them well and then chooses the Shreya over the Preya. The feeble minded, out of attachment and greed, chooses the pleasant or the Preya path. So let's read it together. Shreya cha Preya cha Manushyam etah to samparitya vivinakti dhira Shreya hi dhir abhipreyasah vrinite Preya mand yog kshemat vrinite. So now we all contact this tantalizing world full of enchantments and attractions and sensual pleasures galore. And this is when, in our contact with the world, the traffic of life commences. This is a 24 by 7 traffic of life. And what is the traffic of life? We can broadly split it up into three transactions. And these three transactions are what? We receive the stimuli, then we process it and react to it and feedback or give a response into the world. So now let's go into details on these three transactions. Receiving the stimuli. The stimuli is received through the organs of perception. These are the five senses, our five gateways, which in our tradition is called the Gyanindriya. So these are the hearing, feeling, seeing, tasting, and smelling senses that we have. So the stimuli enters us through these organs of perception. Then our mind and our intellect start processing the stimuli received and building a reaction. Now, here we need to understand that the mind, which is the first point of contact of the organs of perception, functions on likes and dislikes. This we have studied in detail in the Bhagavad Gita. I'm just summarizing that part here again. The mind functions on likes and dislikes, whereas the intellect is the one that discriminates, evaluates, and builds the proper response. The response then reaches our karmindriya or the organs of action. The karmindriyas, which are five: speech, movement, grasp, evacuation, and reproduction. So this is the 24 by 7 traffic that our systems are handling. Maybe when we are sleeping or sleeping, it is out of action for some time, right? Now, but otherwise, we are handling this huge transaction of life. And even just now, even at any given point of time, you will notice how many stimuli are entering you and you are reacting to it and sending a response back into the world accordingly, right? So it's a non-trivial system that we have, that we are fortunate to have. Now, when we contact the world, when these stimuli enter and when our mind and intellect is processing and are sending a feedback, or our organs of action are transacting in the world, we have the choice of doing the right actions, the Shreya actions, or the pleasant or the easy actions. Both choices are available to us. That means that we can either perform the correct action or we can take the easy way out at any given point of time. What Lord Yam is saying in this verse is that a dheer or a wise person evaluates the choices and determines the correct course of action and chooses to perform that. But a mandha or a feeble minded person, out of attachment and greed, chooses the easy course of action. This we should understand because mostly, we are at this level. I wouldn't say that our intellect is not strong enough, but or discriminative enough, but we tend to function at this level, because now let's analyze why does that happen. There are two aspects to our life. One is the standard of living. So we are talking of the physical comforts, amenities. So all these require constant acquisition and then maintenance. The second is the quality of life. Now, this is a different aspect of our life. Is our Am I happy? Am I peaceful? Am I content? Is my life perfect? How much am I affected by the vacillations of fluctuations of life? So, even a simple thing like if the maid doesn't come, how do I handle it? So, our worldly activities are broadly centered around improving our standard of living. So, that means we are focusing on the physical comforts, amenities. So, consequently, we are always acquiring or thinking of acquiring more and more material wealth, and with it comes the the aim of protecting and maintaining these worldly acquisitions. So the wealth, it should be safe, amenities should be functioning. It's all in the world. This is the prayer path. And chapter 5, verse number 12 in the Bhagavad Gita called such a person Ayukta. What this verse is referring to as Mandah. That verse of Bhagavad Gita called such a person Ayukta. So, verse 12 of chapter 5 broadly translated to that one who runs after the world, is attached to material equipments, and indulges freely in the objects of desire, is constantly acting to acquire, possess, and enjoy the worldly objects, and therefore is adding more and more desires and vasanas. This is the bind. So we are creating more binds, and is quite indifferent to Paramatman and self purification, and is agitated by the fruits of one's actions. And this such a person was termed as Ayukta. In the Bhagavad Gita is being called Mandhya. Such a person binds oneself further and further to the world and keeps moving away from one's source or essence or one's ultimate goal. So this verse is calling such a person Mand, who functions out of attachment. Attachment, my job, my family, my house, my so, and greed. That means I have so many amenities, I want this much more. I have so much wealth. Why should I not have this much more? I have 10 cars. Why should I not have another 10 or 20 maybe? I'm so powerful. Why can't I become more powerful? So we are always seeking more and more. We become greedy. And it is occasionally that we pause to evaluate how our actions are actually affecting our quality of life. So are enabling more contentment, peace, bliss within us. The dheer or the wise evaluates the choices and determines the correct course of action and moves on the Shreya path, the good path, which takes us ultimately to our liberation or moksha. That is what the Yamraj is telling Nachiketa. We move on to verse number 1.2.3, the next verse. Satvam priyan priyarupam cha kaman abhidhyayan nachiketah atyasrakshi na etam shrankam vittmayim avaptah yasyam majanti bhav manushya. So Lord Yam says, you evaluated all the desires that I placed before you that were pleasurable and were pleasant in appearance, and you renounced them. You did not choose the chains of wealth that sink most humans. Let's take this up word by word. Sa, such as Tvam, you are, Priyan, what is desirable, Priya Rupam, pleasant, Cha, pleasant in appearance actually, in Roop they are pleasant, Cha and Kaman, desires or desirable objects, Abhidhyayan, evaluated them, Nachiketa, addressing Nachiketa, Atyasrakshi, renounced, Na not, Etam, these, Shrankas, the chains, Vittam Yam, Vittam Yim, road of wealth, Avaptah, accepted, Yasyam, in which Majanti drowns, Bahav, many, Manushya, humans. So you evaluated all these desires that I placed before you that were pleasurable and pleasant in appearance, and you renounced them. You did not choose the chains of wealth that sink most humans. So let's read it together. Satvam priyan priya rupam cha kaman abhidhyayan nachiketah atyasrakshihi na etam srankam vittam yam अवाप्तः यस्यां मजन्ति बहव मनुष्यः. So we read in the previous section how Lord Yam laid out the Priya path in before Nachiketa. Lord Yam offered not only the wealth and pleasures of the mortal world, but also those of the heavens, those pleasures that we mortal cannot even imagine beyond our comprehension. But in each case, Nachiketa, after careful evaluation, and he gave Lord Yam the chaste logic for rejecting them in exchange for his third boon. Nachiketa chose the Shreya path, the correct path, and did not trade off his third boon for all the wealth of this world, nor for the sensual pleasures of the heavens. Nachiketa chose to pursue on initiation into the knowledge of what actually happens to the soul that leaves the physical body and the physical world. So he pursued on the path of salvation, and actually, by making that choice, he proved to be the perfect candidate for Lord Yam's teaching. Lord Yama was actually testing whether how genuine is the seeker. Um, what is it that the seeker really wants? And here Lord Yam says that most people choose this wealth and sensual pleasures, but it is like chain that sinks them further and further. So an ignorant person focuses on the objects of the world instead of that Paramatman, that Brahman. And because when we muse on the objects of the world, we are attached to them and then we develop a desire to have them. So desire now leads to acquisition. And we have read about the nature of the desire. It leads to acquisition. It never gives satiation. We are never fulfilled. We are never content. The rich want to get richer, the powerful want more power, and so on and so forth. And it leads to enjoyment, definitely. Desires, fulfillment of desire leads to enjoyment. But what happens to this enjoyment? It follows the law of diminishing returns and is fleeting. Fleeting means it's transient, it'll go away. So till the time you're eating that famous example of ours, the mango. So you eat the mango, you savor it, and as long as it's in your mouth, you're enjoying it. Once you have consumed the mango, it's over. The pleasure that you were deriving is over. Okay. So it's gone. And law of diminishing returns, it comes out very well in case of addictions that we develop for, let's say, smoking or drugs or alcohol. So whatever pleasure that you were deriving from, let's say, the first cigarette, over a period of time, that one cigarette does not give you the same pleasure. You need at least two, maybe three, maybe a whole pack. I mean, gradually this becomes a whole pack in a day, right? And still you are not able to derive the same pleasure that one cigarette was giving you. So, the joy that we derive by contacting the object of the world diminishes. See, the cigarette is the same, it's the same brand, but and it has the same nicotine content or whatever, it's the same. But when we keep contacting it again and again and again, the pleasure that we derive from this contact keeps decreasing. So it follows the law of diminishing returns. And what is happening is that we are actually seeking that first pleasure that we had obtained. I mean, so the pleasure that we had obtained by having the first of that, whatever we were having, right? So we are looking for that, but it doesn't seem to come in front of us. And why are we looking for that pleasure? Because internally, innately, we are all blissful. If we connect with our root, we are all blissful, peaceful, and that is a normal state. Now, by choosing the Shreya path, this is the direction that we go towards. So, by choosing the Shreya path, maybe we do not attain salvation or moksha in this birth, but at least we do a course correction and move inwards within us and go towards our source. That is the start of our spiritual journey. Nachiketa is our example. Who tells us, who has shown us that he refused to be lured by the wealth and sense pleasures, and therefore he belongs to the wise or the dhir category, in contrast to the mand or the feeble-minded category. Let's move on to the next verse, verse number 4. Duram ete viprite vishuchi avidyaya avidyaya cha vidyeti gyataha vidya bhi pipsin नचिकेतसं मन्ये मन्ये न त्वा कामः बहव alolupantah. So the verse translates to far, in opposite directions, leading to different ends are these two. These are known as ignorance and knowledge. I believe you seek knowledge, O Nachiketa. That is why you were not tempted by the many objects of desires that I placed before you. So let's take this up word by word. Duram, far. Ete are these. Viprite, viprit, opposite. So viprite, in opposite. Vishuchi, leading to different goals, different ends. Avidya, ignorance. Ya, what? Cha, and. Vidyeti, as knowledge. Gyata, are known. Vidya, bhipipsin, desirous of knowledge. Nachiketasam, O Nachiketa. Manye, I believe. Na, not. Twa, you. Kamaha, objects of desire. Bahava, many. Alolupantaha, so lolupanta is covetousness. Alolupanta becomes non-covetousness. So the verse translates to far, in opposite direction, leading to different ends are these two. They are known as ignorance, avidya, and knowledge, vidya. I believe you seek knowledge, O Nachiketa. That is why you were not tempted by the many objects of desires that I placed before you. So let's read it together. Duram ete viprite vishuchi avidyaya cha vidyeti gyataha vidya bhipipsin nachiketasam mane natva kamaha bahava alolu pantaha. So Lord Yam is analyzing the two paths. He's bringing out the differences between the Shreya, the correct, the righteous path, and the pleasant, easy prayer path. So the 3 points of comparisons that have come out in this world, in this verse, which are The two are far apart. So they're different, very different from each other, far apart. They take us in different directions, they head in different directions, leading to different ends. And these, so the goals that they take us to are different. And these are called avidya, ignorance, and vidya, knowledge. So, see, as humans, we are all seeking happiness, peace, tranquility, contentment. But the paths that we all choose are so different. So, the goal remaining the same, the path that each one of us is choosing is different. It's, of course, a result of our tendencies, our vasanas, as we read in detail in the Bhagavad Gita. That's our nature. So, we will function in that. So, someone will derive, let's say, pleasure from just watching a sunset. Another person will derive pleasure by appreciating a piece of art or some piece of music. And another person will derive pleasure by hurting someone. So that's the way we function. We are all different in our uh, uh, baggage of vasana. So that's how we choose a different path. Now, we have to understand that the prayer path, the pleasant path, takes us out into the world where we have the capability, and that's what we'll end up doing ultimately. We indulge indiscriminately in our senses and sense pleasures, leading to happiness born out of contact with the worldly object. We forget the theory that we are reading, that this contact with the worldly objects is transient. It has a beginning and an end and is insatiable. But and so we continue with gay abandon on this priya path. The shreya, the correct path, requires effort. But it inculcates the spirit of service and sacrifice in us and takes us to our essence, to our Paramatman, to God, where we actually get eternal bliss and not the transient joy or happiness that we get on the priya path. Therefore, the two paths are different. One is taking us out into the world where everything is fleeting, temporary, transient, and insatiable. Our nature becomes insatiable. The Shreya path takes us within ourselves to Paramatman, to God, where we can enjoy that eternal bliss. So, this is how the two paths are different. Now, you may recollect towards the end of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, the last chapter actually, we analyze the sukh in terms of the, so there we split, we categorized it into sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic is really not what we are going into. So now let's look at sattvic and rajasic sukh, which was born out of sattvic and rajasic buddhi, intelligence or discrimination, right? That was based, and that led to the sattvic and rajasic dhriti, determination to act. And you may recollect, both these paths were presented in front of us in Bhagavad Gita. As I've told you, that according to a school of thought, Bhagavad Gita is supposed to be a detailed commentary of this Upanishad, Kathopanishad. So I will just read the translation of verses 37 and 38 of chapter 18 of the Bhagavad Gita, which is actually talking about these two parts. So verse number 37 read, this is describing the Shreya path. That which is like poison in the beginning, but in the end like nectar, that happiness is called sattvic, a blessing born from clarity of one's intellect, buddhi. The next verse, 38th verse, talked about the happiness arising from the contact of the sense organ with the object, which is nectarine in the beginning, but in the end, like poison, is called rajasic. So this was the priya path. And then we also read and analyzed how these two paths led to different ends, which are called avidya, ignorance, and vidya, knowledge, in this Upanishad. Nachiketa was offered all the wealth and pleasures of not only the mortal world but of heavens by Lord Yam, and in each case, Nachiketa evaluated them but rejected them by giving the logic why he was rejecting them. And therefore, Lord Yam concludes rightly that Nachiketa is actually seeking knowledge. The last verse for the day, verse number 5 of this subsection, I will read. Avidyayam antare vartamanah swayam dhira panditam manyamanah दद्रम्प्य माणा परियन्ति मूढ़ः अंधेन एव नियमाना यथा अंधाः. So the verse translates to those entrenched in ignorance, avidya, but consider themselves wise, dhir, and learned, pandita, go round and round, committing sins, just as a blind is led by a blind. Let's take this up word by word. Avidyayam. So vidya is knowledge. Yam becomes in, and avidyayam therefore becomes in not knowledge or in ignorance. Antare is within. Vartamana, who live or exist. Swayam, themselves. Dhir is wise. Panditam is learned. Manyamana, so they consider themselves. Dandramya Mada, deluded or crooked. Pariyanti, going round and round, revolving. Mudha, the ignorant. Andhen, Andha is someone who is blind. Andhen becomes by the blind. Ev, truly. Niyamana, being led. Yatha, as. Andha is blind. So the verse translates to those entrenched in ignorance, avidya, but consider themselves wise, dheer, and learned, pandit, go round and round committing sins just as a blind is led by the blind. So let's read it together. Avidyayam antare vartamana swayam dhira panditam manyamanaha dandramaya mana paryanti मूढ़ः anadhen ev niyamana yatha andha. So now here Lord Yam is talking of those who are ignorant, but they think that they are wise and know everything. And they assume that there is nothing more to be known. So, when someone makes a mistake, if you have to convince, you can understand how difficult it is that the person is making a mistake, but the person, firstly, is not aware. That is, awareness you can still handle of the mistake committed. But when the person thinks that there is no mistake, whatever the work has been done is correct, it's so difficult for you to fix the problem. Because first you have to make the person understand that what there is a mistake. So first you have to handle that issue. So you can imagine when someone thinks that I know everything, there's nothing more to be known, how difficult it is to for that person to perceive that there is something beyond that person, or there is God, there is the all knower, omniscient beyond this person. So such people, not only do they not know, but they do not know that they don't know. So that is the problem that has to be handled. And because of this attitude, they continue on their whims and fancies, committing sins. They do not look within and they do not listen to their conscience. So this is where we will end the verse.